Further ahead, the tallest soldier suggests that they should teach these inferior and petty people a lesson. However, the captain replies that he also feels like it, but until Zhang Yi is defeated, they are free labor and food suppliers for them. Furthermore, when everything is over, they will be used at the mountain base to produce energy by pedaling bicycles. Jokir checks to see if his man was injured. Once again, he was victorious and had no injuries. Yang Mi brings his meal, and as he eats, the protagonist asks Karen about the damage to the structure and if she can fix it. She informs him and says that it's all a matter of having the materials. Moreover, she has to go outside to fix it, and at this moment, it's not safe. Just knowing that it's possible is enough. There's no rush for it. He drinks his beverage, and the other girls also want some. They all toast to celebrate another victory. Later, at dinner time, Shinshin informs the protagonist that Professor Liang contacted him. She hands him her phone, and the woman says by message that she intends to negotiate. Before calling the professor, the protagonist asks Shinshin if this woman is trustworthy. She confirms that she always keeps her word. Liang insists on speaking on the phone. She reveals that she's infiltrated the military forces of the Western Mountain Base and can exchange favors with Zhang Yi. The professor says that her students at the base are in danger, so she has no choice but to cooperate. She can be useful to him inside, and all she wants in return is the safety of her students. He responds that when he has something to ask in return, he will get in touch. The protagonist hangs up the phone and tells the girls about the situation of the people in that base on the Western Mountain. Karen, upon learning the fate of her college colleagues, feels sad. Even though she wasn't friends with anyone, she also didn't wish harm upon them. Zhang Yi questions if Shinshin's plan to create a Trojan horse is possible. The girl on 4 wheels says that Professor Liang could infiltrate the base and insert a flash drive so she could access the base's internal systems. Zhang Yi calls back and says that his request is for her to take a flash drive and put it into a computer at the base afterward. She agrees and will trust his word because risking her life to save one of his students who was important to him shows he is a man of value. Later, the captain informs all the villagers that the military is still at the base to save them from the demon that could return to destroy their people. The village should unite and cooperate to destroy the demon that lives on the other side of the lake. The captain goes to the meeting room and warns that the time until the villagers' revolt is short, and some villagers would surely die seeking revenge for the death of their loved ones. This obviously sparked Liang's indignation, being in favor of goodness, and she told him she couldn't bring herself to sacrifice innocent people just to achieve their desires. In response, Feng stated that if she had any other solution to avoid confrontation with the villagers, he was willing to listen. A second leader tried to calm her and explain that she should help them obtain resources from Zhang Yi so that their students could live safely. Hearing this, Professor Liang lost hope and then began pretending to be on their side, as the lives of her students were more important than those of the villagers. She agreed with Feng as long as he tried to avoid the death of the villagers due to overwork. Feng instructed the villagers to prepare to dig tunnels, urging them to unite to rid themselves of the demon, Zhang Yi, once and for all. However, the villagers began to oppose, fearing dialogue, even when the old village leader tried to intervene and convince them that Zhang Yi's death would bring them peace. They all refused to participate in the excavation at first because Zhang Yi had never attacked them since they made a peace agreement with him. This left Liang worried, and she called Zhang Yi to inform him about the situation. She wanted to know what his next move would be. Zhang Yi said he would let them dig as they pleased. He had the situation under control. The teacher then asked for his home address. She needed to know, wouldn't he come to fetch her later? Zhang Yi simply said that things would happen in due time. The next morning, they attacked Zhang Yi's bunker from all sides, while he watched without concern, as if he were in a movie. However, Yang Mi had a question that intrigued her. How could Zhang Yi not care that they were digging into his base? He asked Shinshin to explain. They have equipment that will detect the proximity of anything underground. Letting them expend energy on this is part of the strategy now. Many of them began to die from cold and exhaustion. Those who attempted to rebel would be punished, and definitively so, as he would not allow anyone to go back on their agreement. A few days later, Liang became tense and called Zhang Yi, informing him that people were dying. He replied that he would start executing his plan soon, but had some questions for her. The first was why the number of mutant attacks was decreasing every day. Liang explained that only the leaders were attacking now, while the others were in the village to prevent any rebellion from the dying villagers. Then Zhang Yi said he understood and agreed with her, preparing to act. He left through a secret passage and with his snowmobile drove to Chun's base in his high-ranking military uniform. As soon as the soldier saw it was a superior, he showed respect. At that moment, his life was taken mercilessly. With this first one eliminated, other soldiers inside the village smelled blood and the reaction of the dogs. They went after the culprit, who was wearing the uniform of a superior. They engaged in combat and were completely eliminated by the mutant with dimensional powers and an incredibly sharp sword. When the high-ranking mutants who were away from the village village, noticed the alert signal. They returned as quickly as possible to the base. Zhang Yi, after eliminating hundreds of soldiers in the village, went to Chun and took him to his mansion with the snowmobile. When they returned to the village, they found the bodies of their comrades strewn around. The captain concluded that there must be a traitor for him to know they were out, and that this person must have informed Zhang Yi about the tunnel as well. He left the village after promising himself that he would find them, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, the elderly man was distressed because he didn't know what to say to the villagers whose loved ones had died without receiving any reward. Zhang Yi, on the other hand, was showing Chun her new room. He immediately embraced his new girlfriend. After leaving the room, he went to the control room where Liang and Xinxin were. The teacher had also been brought to the base and had become a traitor to the military base. Xinxin began to explain how she used the information she obtained from Liang to invade the base's systems. She cut off communication from Zishan's military base with Captain Feng's team. This left our MC pleased with his super hacker Loli. He then went to Liang and promised that he would save his students once he eliminated the threat from the leaders. However, his conversation was interrupted by the arrival of troops at the emergency exit. He said he was waiting for them and that it was time for war. Within seconds, he escaped from prison and appeared before them. One of the leaders pointed out that the target was alone and exposed right there. With great anger, one of them advanced to kill Zhang Yi. Even though his colleague tried to warn him about his recklessness, he was determined to kill Zhang Yi. As he approached close enough and thought he would succeed, Zhang Yi pressed a button on the ground, which was connected to a bomb that exploded and dumped tons of snow on him. On the other side, they spotted the traitor Liang, while Feng urged her to pay the price for her betrayal. But Liang explained that she had never been one of them and began her fight with the captain. One of the leaders, even using an ice wall to defend herself, was torn to pieces by the kitty flower. When this happened, Feng lost concentration upon seeing his dead companion, but quickly regained focus with Liang's next attack. Moreover, due to the explosions caused by Zhang Yi everywhere and the powerful and resilient mutants being destroyed, the protagonist with his rifle was relentless. His soldiers were all grouped between Zhang Yi and Chun, who was behind them. All used their powers and unleashed an avalanche of snow on them all. Teacher Liang hurried to flee with the kitty. She grabbed the otaku on the way, and the captain couldn't do anything to stop the traitors from escaping. They were all just cornered by the snow powers of the chubby one, and now they were facing their great enemy, Zhang Yi. He said he would teach them how to use their own weapons. The fools fell for such a simple trick. The protagonist retrieves from his dimensional warehouse and shoots one of the loads of explosives towards them. This made almost all of them die. Few of them who did not lose their lives under the snow could barely recover and saw a giant avalanche over them. Everyone was now covered by meters of snow that they could not get out of. Now everyone was buried in this icy place. The protagonist calls Xinxin to warn that the calculations she made were perfect. Their position and the avalanche were exact. Now everyone can return home victorious. The teacher suggests they should look for the captain and make sure he was dead, but Zhang Yi confirms that he will slowly turn into ice cream under that snow and die for sure. After that, they returned home. The MC joined his wives to enjoy some good wine. Zhang Yi, while enjoying the moment, told Jokir that she should be grateful for being one of the few people in the world to survive so well. From this moment on, our heroes began to live happily ever after, and thus we have reached the end of the first season of this story of the evil Ice King. Whoever leaves a like, legends say, and will have their waifus guaranteed.
Yeah, boy.
Of all the elite soldiers who died in the attack against Zhang Yi, one survived, Captain Feng. He was the only one to return to the base, and their leader was furious at the loss of nearly half of their elite men. Their team consisted of 50 people with exceptional abilities, and their deaths greatly weakened the base and its ability to defend itself in the future. Feng's conscience began to trouble him when he realized that those who had died were considered his brothers, and for this reason, he knelt and apologized to the leader for his leadership failure. He was even willing to die as punishment for his failure to lead his team. However, he also expressed his desire for a second chance to prove his worth and to avenge Zhang Yi, who had cruelly killed his followers and colleagues. Meanwhile, the leader considered whether she should kill Feng and use him as an example to others, but she knew she couldn't afford to lose her most powerful mutant. She decided to punish him by imprisoning him for an entire week to reflect on his mistakes. As Feng departed, the leader began to consider how to handle the situation and decided they needed to stop trying to attack Zhang Yi immediately and focus on replenishing the forces forces they lost in the previous attack. She was aware that there were other bases with similar strength to theirs, and she feared they might attack upon discovering that their army was weakened. Therefore, she summoned her secretary and inquired about the condition of the people they had brought from the village. She replied that they were still undergoing medical examinations, but so far, they were physically well and had a good chance of developing abilities. She ordered to start the experiments immediately, even if they failed to awaken abilities. They should inject Feng's cells into them, as he was their most powerful mutant. She warned that more than 90% of them would likely die if they did so, but he replied that he didn't care about the peasants' lives and was only interested in replacing the soldiers who had died. He knew he needed to bolster his forces to conquer and rule the entire city of Tianhai, but without soldiers and significant strength, it would be impossible. He realized he needed to postpone the matter of the missiles for now and try to negotiate with Zhang Yi to join Zishan's base. So, Leader Chen instructed one of her followers to prepare all the information to contact Zhang Yi. They provided him with a laptop and headphones, and before making the call, Chen decided that if Zhang Yi refused to cooperate, they would use the missiles. Zhang Yi greeted him, saying that Professor Liang had spoken highly of him and that he was impressed by his leadership ability at Zishan's base. Chen felt he was being mocked by his manner of speaking and became irritated, stating that what he was doing was not in his interest. Zhang Yi replied that he knew very well that he was just a weak man, since he couldn't face him after more than 50 of his men failed to do so in the past few days. So Zhang Yi continued to taunt him and asked how he would kill him after more than 50 of his men failed to do so. It was then that he became furious. Chen explained that he would not send anyone else to his bunker but missiles with enough force to destroy the entire bunker. Surprised, Zhang Yi replied that he knew he was lying since there was no base to launch missiles in the city of Tianhai. Chen said he knew people in the neighboring city who had a military base with missiles and who were responsible for bombing their base, although Zhang Yi was beginning to be convinced by his words, saying he didn't want to attack him with the rockets because he admired his talent and wanted to recruit him. Zhang Yi couldn't believe him on this rocket matter, and therefore said he wanted proof that he had rockets. Throw some nearby for him to see. The leader called him stupid. Missiles aren't wasted to prove to someone that they have them. Zhang Yi began to realize by the way he spoke that he wasn't lying to him, but Zhang Yi couldn't believe his words. Our protagonist asked for a few days to think and respond. Chen agreed to give him only one day. Upon ending the call, the leader begins to pray that Zhang Yi accepts his threat and he doesn't have to waste such a precious resource. Our scoundrel protagonist wondered if he should just escape from this shelter for now. Xin doubted whether the leader of the Xinshan base really had these missiles in his hands to use, as he sent so many soldiers and didn't use these missiles before. Zhang Yi said there really is a military base in the neighboring city that has these weapons. If they take that risk and get bombed, it's the end of everything. Zhokir then asks if they couldn't go back to where they lived before. Zhang Yi says, yes, that will be the first thing they do to protect themselves. The security of his harem is the most important thing. Chun was the saddest, as she had just arrived in this warm paradise. Professor Liang reminds him that he promised to save her children. He can't forget that. Zhang Yi stares at his computer lowly and then grabs a small chip from her and hands it to Liang, telling her that the rescue of her students depends on her success. As soon as she inserts this into a computer in the central area, everything will be possible. Liang left the base without being seen by anyone, still with access keys to important parts of the base, as she was the leader there. And as she walked, she encountered two of the staff, so she stopped to listen to them, while the staff talked about her and how they didn't expect Liang to leave, while leaving her students alone. This was a betrayal, so Leader Chen decided to experiment on all her students and many of the villagers. When these scientists left and got into an argument, Liang finally began to speak with Zhang Yi to say that they needed to get her students out of here as quickly as possible. He then said again, she must put the chip into a computer in the central area, and then he will be able to get all the students to escape. If she succeeds, he will honor his promise to provide shelter and food for her students for a while. Of course, Liang was tense at that moment, as she knew that the computer room was one of the most closely watched, but she also knew she needed to do it if she wanted to save her students and destroy the entire base forever. She finished speaking with him and set off to fulfill the mission. Zhang Yi was in the car with his girls, heading to Building 25. He told Xin that if Liang succeeds, they will devise a plan to attack the mountain military base. The lowly girl also reminded him that the information they could steal from them would be very valuable for the future. Zhang Yi says that unknown forces are indeed more worrying. When they find out more about them, at least they will know how to confront them. Their optimistic conversation was interrupted by Karen. She was worried about Professor Liang and afraid they would capture her and beat her to death. As she expressed her concern for her teacher, Zhang Yi smiled and thought to himself that she was just being naive. To him, it didn't matter if she lived or died anyway. But of course, he was a hypocrite and told Karen that good people always have good luck. Karen was convinced by this and said that Liang really is a kind person and will be lucky. But in reality, our scoundrel was laughing inwardly. He didn't believe any of it. After a while, they arrived in the Yuanluo area, where Uncle Yu was waiting for them with his new wife and was willing to help them. Meanwhile, Chun was sad and crying because she left her inflatable wife behind. Zhang Yi looked around and realized there was no sound in the area, so he was confident that all the neighbors had died, but his thoughts were interrupted by his uncle's lewd voice, who was glad that Zhang Yi and his friends were still okay. When our lovers' gang returned to where it all began,